Welcome to Solo Gaming, where I don't play to win. I play to tell the story differently and find out how it ends this time. Today I'm playing the Battle of Five Armies by Ares Games. This isn't an unboxing video. It's not a how-to video. My goal is to show you how much fun it can be to play solo and see what happens. Now right out of the chute, the shadow player got stuck with a 3 tile, fate tile. That puts Bilbo out on the board. The fellowship player is trying to muster his troops before the shadow hordes descend. A mass of wargs and orcs reaches the eastern shore. The shadow player plays sudden assault and attacks across the eastern bridge. The orcs do 1 damage, and I place a little red damage crystal I bought at a craft store, which I use for marking damage because it's easier to hold than the triangular damage tokens. Those I use for the original purpose to show how much damage is still left in fortresses. It's the next turn. A leadership token is placed on Dane and 1 on Thranduil. That allows the shadow player to draw 2 chits. First chit he draws is a 3. He will like to draw again. Next chit he draws is 1 with a fate symbol. Fellowship player draws a fate symbol, and they draw the eagles are not kindly birds. The shadow player's going, yeah, I know they're not kindly. That's going to haunt them later. And then after a bunch of rallying, the troops begin moving out. The orc hordes are massing. With their last die, the orcish horde crosses Eastern Ford and attacks retreating Lakemen with Bilbo. They have played Troubled Mind, which prevents Bilbo from using his ability to absorb 2 damage. The Lakemen rout and have to take the 2 damage, losing half their number. But now they have fallen back to the Runes of Dale. And critically, that ends that turn, and a new turn means a new draw from the Fate Bag. The Free Peoples play 2 leadership tokens, placing 2 leaders in the Runes of Dale. The shadow player places 3 leadership tokens in these 3 armies, and places 3 bats in the valley. The Free Peoples army flips its last 2 tokens, and they call across to the orcs. Bring it! Now the orc strategy is to try to run timeout on a turn so that when they do finally attack, there aren't many dice left for the Free Peoples player to respond with. Oops, forgot the fate tiles. First one they draw is a 2. They're going to chance it and try again. Can we get a 1? Can we get a 1? A 2. Guess it was meant to be. That brings out Thorin Oakenshield. He's inside Moria. And even more critically, he places reinforcement tokens in Eastern Spur, the camp, and the Fallen Bridge. Now back to our turn at its regularly scheduled spot. We'll start with the huge orcs battling down the defenses on Eastern Spur. First they need 6s to try and break down the defenses. And they have failed, and the bowmen fire back. They inflict heavy damage. This time both sides played a regroup card to get their chosen cards back. The dice are not favoring the shadow player. But this time the walls come tumbling down. 3 hits destroy the defenses. But the stout defenders do 3 hits. After removing casualties, the forces are spent. The Eastern Spur has held. In a bold move, Thranduil himself moves over to the lower slopes with elven reinforcements. The shadow player spends a die to draw some more cards, and when the Free Peoples player goes again, Thranduil leads an elven charge. This army containing elves will charge and attack this shadow army. With this elven charge card, the Free Peoples leadership is 5 for the duration of the combat. The elves let loose their torrent of arrows. They do 3 damage. This forces the orcs to remove a figure. This time the Free Peoples players regroup so they can recover their Wood Elf card. They do a total of 3 damage, and the Fellowship players do 2 damage. Again, the orcs must take casualties. Desperate-like, the wargs attack in a frenzied manner. Free Peoples players regroups, gets their card back. It's mostly a question now of how much damage the wargs can do. They do 1 damage, but critical here, when the wargs do that kind of damage, at the end of this round, the Fellowship player has to take and remove casualties. And the Fellowship player strikes back, doing 2 damage. That eliminates the Shadow Army. But like I said, the Fellowship Army has to take casualties, and they lose 2. And the Orc Army attacks the Ruins of Dale. This is critical. They really need to sack the Ruins of Dale. The Dark Forces throw the Orcs into a wild rage, inflicting 2 damage, and with the Orcs it gives them another leadership card. But the Free Peoples player does do 2 damage on their army. Now they play regroup so they can use the Lakeman ability again. Bilbo is going to use his ability out of the way. He disappears, removing 2 casualties. The Shadow player plays vampire-like, this time doing 4 casualties. The Lakemen fire back, doing 3 damage. It's a bloody round. The Free Peoples player plays Captains of War. They can remove this character token and remove 2 damage. That reduces them to 4 damage, and they have 4 characters. They're good. This is getting close. They can play regroup to get their card back, and they could then retreat without taking casualties, but they'll have to fight 1 more round. The Orcs now need to regroup. Now they've got 5 casualties. Any more casualties, they're going to have to start removing figures. So both sides are at that point where you got to start removing figures if you have any more casualties. The Orcs do a total of 3 casualties. The Free Peoples player does none. They played a regroup card, so the bowman gets away. Now the Orc army is occupying Dale, but it's heavily damaged. Now the Shadow player could bring Bolg on, but he doesn't have any muster dice left. Moria! Dane! Moria! I can attack, move up to 2 regions and attack with an army containing dwarves. Guess what they're going to do? They're going to recapture Dale. They have terrain advantage, they get an extra card, and the card is no quarter. Add 1 damage to the army. They're fresh, they can take 1 damage, and all their dice get +1. They did 4 damage. Shadow player counterattacks, doing 3 damage. And then they have to remove casualties, leaving them with 1 warg with a damage marker on him. The warg's going to try and see if he can do a damage, because if he can, that'll take out a lot of figures. Dwarves play the Dwarven regulars. If they get a hit, they can use the regulars to remove 3 damage with 1 figure. Let's see how this goes. The injured warg does nothing. Of course, the warg takes many hits. He goes down. Critical's one of those hits. Was with the black die, which gets rid of 3 of these, and a dwarf. At the end of this most epic turn, the Shadow player takes stock of where he's at. Now, he did just release these goblins. He's got a full army over here, but there's no chance of Bolg being brought on anytime soon. That's not true. Bolg could be brought on. If they get it, all I have to do is cross this here and they can bring Bolg on, but they wouldn't have Ruins of Dale, so he wouldn't be as strong as he could be. This will be close. I was going to call it here, but I'm not going to because there is still a battle to be fought. He still has 2 dice to play. He's going to play another goblin die to build this goblin force up to 5 and break down that bridge. This one will go to 6. Now, it could be the goblins that make the difference. These goblins could race down and take camp. These guys can race back to capture camp, but then these orcs are going to be coming across here to capture Dale. Now, normally these guys could be a force to be considered, but you've got the goblins over here that are going to come down. Take it from that side. This is still in doubt. Okay, next turn starting out. The Fellowship player believes they've finally caught up, and they're ready to bring the herd on. This means they're using all 3 of the leadership tokens, putting them on Bard, Dane Ironfoot, and Thranduil. And Gandalf has his spell all charged up. We're ready to go. This means they can place 3 leaders on the board. And they're going to augment the armies already on the board. I mean Gandalf and Thranduil here, Dane in the Ruins of Dale, and Bard in the Eastern Spur. Now the Shadow player draws fate tiles. 2 with the fate marker. They don't want that, so they'll try again. He's got 3 chances this time. A 3, they definitely don't want that. And another 3. So there's nothing they can do. The Eagles of the Misty Mountains are available. This time the Fellowship player will place a leadership token with each of the Goblin forces, with these orcs out here, and with these great orcs here. This will allow me to move some of these orcs to here, combining the two leadership tokens. And he'll place the two bats here in the Broken Lands. Now we roll the action dice. Now the Free People's player gains another action dice for a total of 6, because Thorn Oakenshield is in play. Also this turn, very good turn for the Fellowship player, he's rolled 3 Will of the West, which act as wild dice. For the Shadow player to get an additional die, he needs to control 2 settlements. He controls none. Now this is also amazing. He has 4 Lidless Eye dice, which means this is pretty much an all-goblin turn. The Free People player plays an event die and plays a card that allows him to move Bjorn 1 space closer. So next turn, Bjorn will be out. At the beginning of the next turn, Bjorn will enter play, and if the Shadow player does not have 6 victory points, the Fellowship player wins immediately. That means that this turn, these goblins will have to capture Fallen Bridge, or these goblins have to capture the camp, and these great orcs, and hopefully the goblins will join them, have to capture Eastern Spur. That's just to make sure they don't lose instantly. Let's see how this goes. First things first, those orcs join up, move an army to adjacent region and attack. They will now attack the Eastern Spur. They've played the maneuver cards, the Lakemen, and the Great Orcs are active. The Great Orcs are able to get a hit. They needed a 6. For the first turn up a slope, you have to get a 6. And he does 1 damage. He'll do 3 damage if they don't eliminate all leader tokens. Well, they have 1. They'll eliminate it. So they take 1 damage. Ouch. Free People's player deals 5 damage, which is 6. So the Shadow player loses a figure. He does 3 damage. The Free People's players, they do 1 damage. 1 damage is enough to get rid of another orc. Next round, more maneuver cards are played. Free People's army do no damage. The Shadow player played Captain of War, which allows him to remove a leadership token, and in fact he's going to remove 2 leadership tokens and remove all the damage on his army. So it's fresh, but they are down to 3 figures left. Shadow army does 3 damage. The Free People's army does 1 damage. Now the Free People are desperate. Free Peoples can take 2 damage. And they sustain 4. They're eliminated. But what kind of damage can they do back? They roll 1 damage, but it's the Dwarven Veterans die that works. So they add a damage, so it's 2 damage. So the Eastern Spur has fallen. Free People player plays a muster die. There's elite dwarves at the camp, and elven archers at the Fallen Bridge. The Shadow player plays an Orc Army event card, which places 5 orcs, 1 space in 1 area of the Broken Lands, and then they can move up to 2 spaces. They'll move there. Free People's player will play a character die. Primarily, places a Lord of Eagles with an eagle in the Eagle's Eyrie. While I do that, I can spend a token and place Bilbo on the board. He appears at the Fallen Bridge. And Dane uses his ability, place a token at the camp. And now the goblins come. They break out of here and attack the Elven Spearmen here. Goblins play their Goblin card, doing 3 damage. The Elven Spearmen are lost, but they do a damage back. Free People's player plays a Will of the West as a character card. And Gandalf and Thranduil retreat to the hills. Then the Shadow player attacks with the goblins. Once again, this time at Fallen Bridge, where Bilbo is. They do a total of 3 hits. They use their goblin ability because they add 2 attacks, add a damage to themselves to add a damage to the Fellowship player. Or the Free People's players, I should be saying. Bilbo uses the ring to disappear and takes 2 damage with him. They retreat to there. They were hoping to take Ravenhill, but that will not be possible with these guys here. Free People plays another movement token. These guys move up there, and Thranduil releases an arrow attack. There are 5 archers within range of those goblins, doing 2 more damage. Now these goblins have 5 damage. And I use the Will of the West, and I'm just going to use it as a regular movement, which allows me to move 2 armies one space. One was the main army here up on the Ravenhill, and this small army will go over here to the side. And now this goblin horde spills out. They play the last Will of the West roll as an army movement token. And this army moves up to full strength. So they'll probably sacrifice that, win as the last action die. The goblins move forward and capture camp. And now they have, the shadow player has 8 points. 4, 6, 8 points, which is greater than the 6-point minimum required if Bjorn gets activated, and Bjorn will be activated next turn. So there's not an automatic victory that way. But they need to capture 1 more settlement. These guys will haul back to the Ruins of Dale, and then they need either to capture the Ruins of Dale, Ravenhill, or the front gate. And the front gate has a strength of 6 that has to be reduced before they can even attack that. All of which might be possible with the forces on the board. But next turn they'll have Bjorn and the Eagles entering. And you need to be a whole lot, it'll be over next turn. The Shadow Army fades away. This cannot be done. That was a good game. If you thought this playthrough was fun, please give me a like and subscribe. Thank you.